super excited to see how the rest of it plays out. So yeah, we're gonna get into our four favorite draft prospects. Draft's coming up in a couple weeks. It's on the 25th. This is a super exciting draft class overall, obviously with Cooper Flag headline in it. But there's so many guys throughout the draft that we really just want to shine a light on and give them their flowers. So first, starting off for me, my favorite player in the draft is Derek Queen. I'm not saying he's the best player. I think Cooper Flag, he's going to be number one on just about everybody's big board right now. But for me, Derek Queen's a guy who's gone a little bit underrated. He got a lot of praise during March Madness, and rightfully so. He had that crazy game-winning shot against Colorado State. He had a lot of big moments there. But since then, I feel like his stock has kind of fallen a little bit. I've seen him more so projected to be that late lottery pick, whereas I thought he was trending upwards back in March. But at the same time, when I look at Queen's game, he's just so gifted offensively. I understand there are some defensive concerns, but at the same time, metrically, he did check out pretty well defensively. And when you have a guy that's that gifted on offense, I really don't care as much. I think he just brings so much to the table as a offensive creator, a guy that can really score, creating his own shot or score in the post. He can just do so much offensively. He's versatile in that regard. He passes the ball really well, has a great feel for the game. I feel like he has star potential, and you could get this guy, like I said, as a late lottery pick. I wouldn't be upset at all if a team took a swing on him earlier, but I feel like as it's trending, he seems to be more so projected in that sort of like 8 to 14 range. So I feel like he's just an awesome player, and for me, he's a top 5 prospect in this class. I think he just has so much star potential, and with the offensive arsenal that he has, I feel like there's not a scenario where he's not at least a high quality role player, sort of in the vein of Nas Reed. I do view him upside wise as like a prime DeMarcus Cousins. That's sort of the vibes I
Mm.
get, just as that offensive creator, the guy that can just get you buckets at really all areas of the floor as a center, and that's really a gifted skill to have, especially in today's NBA. I feel like the game's trending more towards guys at every position that can create for themselves and others. So I feel like that's what really stands out with Queen's game, and he's just so much fun to watch. And I really always like that archetype of big. I mean, Danny Wolf, he didn't make my list, but he's another guy that can sort of handle the ball and create his own shot, despite being a 7 footer. So I feel like those types of bigs I'm always drawn to. And I mean, obviously, you look at the NBA. I feel like that's where it's trending. You look at Nikola Jokic. Obviously, I'm not saying Queen's going to be Jokic, but a guy like that who can handle the ball, create for himself and others, I feel like it's been so valuable. And then Alperen Şengün, he's another guy that sort of reminds me of Queen in that regard. Just his ability to create shots, his craftiness there, his ability to handle the ball. So yeah, overall, I just feel like Queen is a prospect that has gone a little bit under the radar, but it's going to really make a strong impact in the NBA and has superstar upside.
You know what? Derek Queen was a guy, I'm not gonna lie. I remember he played beside Cooper Flag in Montverde in high school. I wasn't really checking for him like that. And then I seen some tapes, across the IG reels that I look at on the basketball side of things. And I was like, he got some nice footwork. But for a big, you don't see too many guys his size able to move like that. I agree with you when you say he's the most skilled big in this draft. He can score facing up. He can score with his back to the basket. He has impressive passing ability. The rebounding, still a little bit left to be desired there. But when you say you see the DeMarcus Cousins comparison, DeMarcus Cousins was one of my favorite bigs in the league in the 2010s era. And he was a guy that was putting up 25 and 10 easily in his prime. I see why you say that a little bit. I think Cousins had more of a polished shot, and I think Queen's shot is still a work in progress. But yeah, I could definitely see him going anywhere between the range of 8 through 14 in the draft and being a force to be reckoned with in the league. He definitely has all-star potential and a guy that I could see is being capable of putting up, 20 and 8, 20 and 10. Kind of see a little bit of remnants of Al Jefferson in his game too. A guy that started his career at the Boston Celtics. So I think he's going to be a player to monitor and watch. I think he fits with a lot of teams. I tell you one thing, where I'm at right now, Chicago, the Bulls would love to have him if they could get him. They would love to have a guy like Derek Queen. For me, one guy that I like, or my favorite player in the draft class, is VJ Edgecombe, man. He reminds me a lot of Dwayne Wade, Donovan Mitchell. I even see a little bit of remnants of Westbrook in his game. 6'5", buck 80. He's one of the more ready two guards physically that you will see entering the league. And I think his proven experience playing on an international level, representing his country in the Bahamas in some national tournaments, averaging around 16, 5, and 4 on some great shooting splits and 2 steals a game. he's proven that he could play against, professionals, at least around the world. And he's very explosive, has an amazing first step with phenomenal lateral quickness, vertical ability, and like I said, that first step makes him a nightmare to keep up with. Great touch around the rim, could finish amidst contact. Still got work to do, as far as improving his jump shot. But man, when I see VJ Edgecombe, like, and I look at a team like the Charlotte Hornets with LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, and those guys, I think he could fit in real perfectly over there, man.
Yeah, most definitely. Edgecombe's super impressive to me. The two-way abilities, as you mentioned, the ability to score downhill, just an absurd athlete. I mean,
Yeah.
defensively, he's a lockdown guy on ball, and he can really cause havoc off ball as well, just with his athleticism. I think that's super valuable to have, just considering there's not a ton of great perimeter defenders in the NBA. So getting a guy like him, super valuable, and then offensively, he can just attack the rim at such a high level. The shot, it's a little bit of a work in progress, but I do seem to really like his fundamentals when I watch the tape. And I think he can develop nicely on that end of the floor and really become that sort of three-level scorer in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
And then playmaking wise, he does seem to have a pretty solid feel for the game. He's not going to be your lead ball handler by any means, but like you mentioned with the Charlotte fit, if he's sliding in to the backcourt next to LaMelo Ball, I think that's really ideal because LaMelo is not a great defender, but he's such a gifted ball handler that they sort of complement each other nicely in that regard. So I think that would really be a perfect fit, and I do hope he goes to Charlotte at 4. I think they do need sort of another star there for their rebuild, although LaMelo and Brandon Miller is a nice starting place. I feel like they're just sort of one or two pieces away, and I feel like Edgecombe could be perfect for that role. I'm curious sort of to see what the Sixers end up doing at 3,
I
because
am too.
nothing would surprise me at this point. I mean, are they going to trade down? There's rumors that they're going to trade up with San Antonio now, which is kind of
Yeah.
crazy. I'm kind of conflicted with them a little bit because I feel like they don't necessarily need another guard, and I feel like it would be tough for a guard to sort of break into that rotation with Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain already there, and then what do you do with Quentin Grimes, who was just awesome to end the season, but he's a restricted free agent. I would assume you want to bring that guy back, so I think you'd try to maybe look to upgrade the forward position. Maybe you find a Joel Embiid successor. I nothing would surprise me with this team right now, and I'm fascinated to see how they go. But I also think that's another potentially intriguing landing spot for Edgecombe. But I don't see him getting past 4 with the Hornets. I feel like if he's on the board at 4, the Hornets are 100% going to take him.
Yeah, you gotta take them. You gotta take them. When you talk about Philadelphia, man, that's a situation me and Torrance were just talking about on my show, the new 24 this week on episode 31. You guys can check that out, available on all platforms. And follow our RSS feed at rss.com/podcast/TNTF. But with Philadelphia, like, they could go in so many different directions. I don't think they should trade the pick by any stretch. I think you should keep your options open. If you want to pivot away from the Joel Embiid PG-13, led regime, you could do that. VJ Edgecombe, though, to Philly. I've seen a lot of mock drafts saying that he could go to them. I don't know how that works when you have Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain. I don't know how you make that 3-guard lineup work. I think VJ could be a hit there, but I look at a guy like Ace Bailey more so being a better fit for the Sixers than VJ Edgecombe. I think that's a guy, even if you keep Paul George beside him, you could run them, together at either the 3 or 4 alongside Embiid at the 5. You got a Maxi McCain backcourt. You look at that roster starting 5-wise, you say, hey, that's a solid playoff squad. And the one thing about Ace Bailey, he could play up to 4 spots on the court, has size, and one-on-one could get you a bucket, when things stop isolation was like you got 5 guys where you could play 5 out with them. That's the thing I really like about that one. I don't know how VJ Edge going to fit in Philly, though. Been seeing a lot of mock drafts put him there.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I feel like if you don't love the Ace Bailey fit for whatever reason, you don't think he's able to contribute immediately, I think you would definitely look to trade down, especially I know that the Pelicans are one team that's super interested in Ace Bailey, so I feel like that's one potential target for them, or a Utah Jazz could potentially try to trade up to
Definitely.
get that star. So I feel like there's a lot of teams that would be willing to trade up, and then you can just move back a little and still get a guy that can contribute at a high level and might be a better fit for your team right now. I feel like one guy I'd look at is Nipple. I feel like he can just really fit
I
in with
like
any
that.
team, especially Philly. They could just use another like spot up shooter on the win. So I feel like that's a great fit. Or if you want to go with a Malawach, who could eventually become Embiid's successor. I mean, with Embiid's injury history, I feel like that's not the worst idea in the world to sort of be looking at other options there. And I think Malawach or even potentially Derek Queen, who I just mentioned, could be a good option there. But yeah, moving on to my next guy, it's going to be another big man, Thomas Sorber out of Georgetown. He's a guy that I've always sort of been intrigued by his prototype, but watching his game a little bit recently, he just really jumped off the screen to me, and he really became one of my guys. It was fully cemented after I watched some of his tape, just how much I like this guy, and I feel very confident that he should be a lottery pick. He's sort of trending right now as a late lottery to mid first round guy, but I think he 100% should be a lottery pick, especially when you look at sort of the teams in the lottery, particularly the end of the lottery with the Chicago Bulls at 12 and the Atlanta Hawks at 13. I feel like one of those two teams should really jump on the opportunity to add a big man like him, and he'd be a perfect fit there. A little bit about his game. He's just an athletic two-way big. He's really a great rim protector. I think he averaged over 2 blocks a game at Georgetown. And he's also very versatile in that end of the court. He's not super big. He's only about 6'10", but he has a monster 7'6" wingspan. So that definitely bodes well for his defense at the next level. And block shots and rotate onto perimeter guys if need be, which is just a really essential skill in the NBA. And then offensively, he is pretty gifted. He's can be sort of a classic like lob threat, pick and roll type of guy, but he also can create for himself a little bit, and he definitely seems like he's very comfortable with the ball in his hand. Sort of like Queen is another thing I value. He can create for himself a little bit. Very solid passer. I don't think he's necessarily going to be like a playmaking hub or anything at the next level unless he goes to the right team. But at the same time, it's just always a good thing to have guys that are good decision makers and can read the defense well, and that's exactly what he can do. So I feel like he's definitely one of my favorite prospects and a guy that I think is a little bit undervalued in this class. I would personally have him as a clear top 10 prospect, whereas most people seem to have him sort of in that like 15 to 20 range.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of, Thomas Sorber talk. And I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't really too familiar with him until about 3 weeks ago. I saw a clip of his come across my timeline on Twitter, and I, clicked on it and I watched it, and I was like, he kind of remind me a little bit of an Al Horford type of big, but with more athleticism. And like you said, even though he's 6'10", 6'11" ish, with that wingspan. And what I like about him is his verticality. He goes straight up when he blocks shots. He's not fouling. And he can stretch the floor a little bit and shoot. And outside of Derek Queen, I would say if you looking for a big that, has nice footwork and is offensively skilled, you won't find another one better. Outside of Derek Queen, this is your guy. And he would definitely be a guy that, if the Chicago Bulls would have landed him, I would really like that pick. And even the Atlanta Hawks, we talked about that behind the scenes. And you was bringing that to me when we were talking recently about the draft and Sorber. Man, like you put him in that front court with a Jalen Johnson, a Zachary Ricochet. That could really be scary over there beside Trey Young. You talk about a guy that not only could be a pick and roll option, but could be a pick and pop option. He has the dexterity to beat you with the finesse game, and he has a little bit of a power game too. So I like Thomas Sorber's profile a lot, and I wouldn't be shocked if one of these teams in the top 10 sought to say, hey, let's take a chance on him, because as you know, these workouts are key, and elevating the guy's draft stock. And if he impresses a team with one of these workouts, I think he'd be a guy that's a fast riser. But if he's not, somebody in that late end of the lottery or just outside, they're gonna get a good player with him. That's a guy that stands out to me as well. And you brought up Con Knipple earlier. I like Con Knipple as a prospect. Is he the most flashiest guy? No, he's not. But like you say, he's a catch and shoot option. A guy that I think, if he were to fall, I know he's not gonna fall outside the top 10, but if you San Antonio with that 14th pick and he's on the board, and you need outside shooting, or if you want to trade down, that's a guy that is, I think, worthy enough to trade down for, and you get him and insert him with guys like Wimby, Stephon Castle, and the like. That's a nice pickup or addition. So I like his game a lot. I thought he fared pretty well alongside of Cooper Flag in college. And, got a little bit of wiggle to his game too, but just moving, without the ball, 3-point shooting. That's things that are essential to win in the days. And I definitely see him fitting like a glove no matter where he is. Good team player. Plays defense as well.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like he's a guy, like you said, he can really fit in anywhere. And he might not have the highest ceiling in the draft, but when you look at guys with a super high floor and moderately high ceiling as well, I feel like he's the top of the list. And he can, yeah, just shoot the ball really well, and he has a great feel for the game. He can play make great for himself a little bit, competes on defense. There's really not a lot to dislike about his game, and I feel like he'd be the perfect fit for several teams. I like the Spurs pick because their shooting around Wemby is just really brutal. So if you could get a guy next to Wemby like that who can shoot that well, I think that would be ideal. And also just Spurs culture, I feel like he sort of fits into the mold of a lot of players that they've had in the past, guys that can shoot well and they can move the ball. So I feel like yeah, that would be a perfect fit. Another team I really like, assuming they stay at 10 and they don't make a trade, I think the Rockets would be an ideal fit for Con Knipple, just given how poor their shooting has been, especially last year, but also that they're looking to compete right now, and I feel like he's a guy that can slide in and immediately make an impact, whereas some of these other guys in the lottery might take some time to develop, and the Rockets might not really have as much time for that. I feel like Con Knipple would thrive under that Ime Udoka system, and he'd really provide them with a lot of what they need.
Yeah, man. Like you said, Con Knipple, he could help both Texas squads that's in the lottery. I like that Houston one because Houston's the team that I watch a ton of. I love the way that they get after it defensively, but shooting and half court offense leaves a lot to be desired over there, and they need a knockdown shooter alongside of the playmakers and athletes that they have, and Con Knipple could definitely provide them with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. They're definitely one of my favorite teams to watch in the league. I just think they need a little bit of support around the edges. Maybe they do make a big trade for a star, but it's sort of looking like they're just going to try to ride it out with this core. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, they were second seed in the West last year, so they
Right.
obviously have a lot of talent there, but I do think shooting is one area that they definitely need to improve upon this offseason. Next guy I want to talk about is Drake Powell. I think when you look at guys in the draft, Carter Bryant's a guy that has a lot of buzz to go as a lottery pick. It looks like he's pretty much primed to go as a lottery pick, and I think he absolutely should. I think he's an awesome prospect. But I feel like Powell offers a pretty much the same skill set as Carter Bryant, and he's going to be taken, or is at least projected to be taken, a lot later in the draft. He's projected as sort of a mid to late first round guy. I am a UNC fan, so I did get to watch a lot of him throughout the season, and he's just such an impressive on ball defender. Probably the best win defender in the draft. You could maybe make an argument for Carter Bryant as well. Like I said, they're very similar, but just super impressive on ball, and then just another guy that can really wreak havoc off ball. He just there's no way he's not going to be a high quality defender in the league. And that bankable skill set does give him a relatively high floor, despite being seen a little bit as a riskier prospect offensively. He doesn't have a polished game much. He didn't show much as a shot creator while at North Carolina, but at the same time, he does have a 43-inch vertical, which was the highest in the combine. So I think that really does bode well for him. And then he is a former 5-star recruit, so you go back to those high school days. He only played a year at Carolina. He definitely has that potential to develop into a really high quality shot creator. And 3-point shooting, he is really gifted at. He especially as a catch and shoot guy. He shot 38% from three. So just the catch and shoot abilities with him, as well as the defensive prowess and just his athleticism, physical tools. He has over a 7-foot wingspan, which is really crucial for a guy that's only 6'6". I think he's going to be a really good win and perimeter defender, as well as a 3-point shooter, one of those classic 3-and-D guys at worst, and I think he has potential to be a legitimate star and really a diamond in the rough in this draft.
Yeah, man. We talk about how important glue guys are, at least in these finals, with the benches and stuff, right? When I look at Drake Powell's profile, I definitely see a guy that's a high energy defender. That's the defender that teams can use. Even if the offense isn't there, that's the guy that you're going to put on the opposition's best wing score night in, night out, and I think you can trust him. And if he continues to play that level of defense that we saw him play in the ACC in his long season there with the Tar Heels, I think he's gonna find a home quite well in the NBA and get some minutes. Cause that's the quickest way to get minutes in the league is playing good defense. And he kind of remind me a little bit of Herb Jones with his profile. I see a little bit of Herb Jones, and for guys that's around my era, I would say Tabo Cephalosha. One of those wings that you just could trust defensively. I question the offensive profile a little bit. He's not a guy that really looks for his shot. Yes, he's a catch and shoot player, but yeah, that's a guy. If you looking for wing defense, guy that's a solid team player, that might be a guy that you want. A guy that stands out to me, another one, my third guy is Rasheer Fleming, man, out of St. Joseph. That's a guy that's really worked on his game a lot. And when I see him, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Pascal Siakam, Obi Toppin. Yeah, he struggles with his shot a little bit, but you know what I like about him? He can defend 4 positions on the floor. He can also pick and pop, knocked down 3 point shots at a high rate. Really worked on his 3 point shot, evolved as a perimeter shooter. I believe he was shooting well under 40% his freshman season, picked it up, made about 60 triples one sophomore year, was shooting over 40%. That's a guy that might not be your number one or your number two option, but could be a damn good number three option and be one of those guys that if a contender gets him, like in the mid teens, the early 20s, you look at him a couple years from now, you be like, man, how did he fall so low in the draft? Like, really got a lot of talent.
Yeah, for sure. He's a guy that I watched a lot of film on recently as I was doing a little bit of a profile for him on Duncan with Wolves, just analyzing his fit with the Timberwolves. I think he'd be a great fit there. But he can just really fit so many teams. Like you said, just so versatile defensively. He can really make an impact there. I believe he has a 7'5" wingspan, which is just kind of crazy. And he can defend multiple positions and he can sort of play different roles. He can play as that traditional power forward, small forward type of guy, spot up and shoot, but then he can also play more of a center role. He's pretty athletic, so he can catch lobs and then he can defend the rim as well. Really good shot blocker. So just the versatility with him really stands out, and I feel like there's no scenario where he doesn't have at least a productive NBA role, just with his ability to catch lobs, score inside, as well as space the floor, and then just how impactful he is on defense. There's no scenario in my mind where he doesn't have a productive NBA career. And like you said, I think he could really benefit a lot of those contended teams. I could see a scenario where he does fall a little bit in the draft just because he's a little bit of an older prospect. Didn't play at the biggest school at St. Joseph, so I feel like that might hurt him in some people's mind, but I don't think it should. A couple teams I like the fit for. The Spurs at 14, I think that might be a little bit higher than where some people project him, but I think he would fit perfectly next to Wemby with his defensive versatility and his ability to space the floor. Timberwolves, as I mentioned, I think would be a good fit, especially you don't know what's going to happen this offseason with Naz Reid. Gobert's getting a little bit older. Get a guy that has the capabilities to play the five, but can also defend other positions. And then the Thunder, just when you look at their culture of defense, length, versatility, I think he's a clear fit there. So there's just so many. I could go through damn near every team in the league, and I feel like
Right.
you could make the pitch for him to fit there. But I think that's what makes him such a intriguing prospect is just his ability to really play any style and just his overall versatility. So yeah, I'm a big Rasheer Fleming guy as well.
He be scary with the Thunder, man. With the defensive depth that they have and the length and size, you throw him right into the mix beside a Lou Dort. I don't even want to imagine that for the league, man. That would be real scary. Rasheer Fleming going at 15. But yeah, I could definitely see the Wolves being a nice option, especially with the conversations that we had about Nas Reed, who's a free agent, and we know he may be looking for a starting role. And if the Wolves aren't able to give him that, he may have to seek to go elsewhere. And we know he's going to get paid as he's outperformed his deal. Rasheer Fleming will be a nice replacement for Nas Reed for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. I feel like just those teams right outside of the lottery are in such a good position. I'm sort of really learning that as I'm diving into prospects for the Timberwolves. There's so many guys that I could see fall into them because somebody has to fall in the draft, and there's so
Hmm.
many guys that can really fit what this team needs. I mean, whether it be Rasheer Fleming, like we talked about, Thomas Sorber's another guy who I really like his fit on the Timberwolves. And then as we discussed with the Thunder, man, that would be very scary if they were able to get Rasheer Fleming or
Telling
really
you.
any prospect. I mean, there's so many guys that could follow the Thunder right outside the lottery at that pick 15. Another guy, he's not one of my guys, but just quickly throw him out. Cedric Coward of Washington State, 7'2" wingspan, can shoot the three ball really well. Creates his own shot as well. So he's another versatile guy who I could see the Thunder grabbing at 15 if he's available. I feel like the Thunder are almost certain to take him. Carter Bryant if he just slips out of the lottery, which I don't think he will. I think he'll probably be a lottery pick. But there's just, I mean, so there's the Thunder. There's no way that they don't win the draft if they're picking at 15 because there's just so many guys they can add to this already impressive young core. Perhaps they do trade the pick, but I don't really feel like that's a Sam Presti move. I think it's more likely that they end up actually trading up. But there's so many guys in this draft, just thinking about the Thunder as we just talked about them for the finals, that they could really benefit from and really fit their identity and their defensive culture. Actually, another one of those guys, my last guy in the draft is Colin Murray Boyles of South Carolina. He's a super versatile wing. One thing that really stands out about him is just his elite level defense. I believe he did rank within the 98th percentile for defensive box plus minus, which is super impressive. But he's really able to guard any position. He had a lot of responsibilities on really both ends of the floor at South Carolina, but defensively he was often asked to guard opposing bigs despite being 6'7", so not the tallest guy, but he's super sturdy. He has that versatility, almost like a Draymond Green, where he can guard multiple positions, can play that versatile role. He can also guard forwards and even guards if he need be. He's not going to start on a guard, but on a switch or a scenario like that, he holds up nicely. And he's super athletic, super disruptive on that end of the floor. And yeah, just really one of the better defenders in this draft class. I mean, other than Derek Queen, I think a big theme with my prospects is just elite level defense. I think these are three of the better defenders in the class. And I feel like that, like you said earlier, really gets you on the floor to start your NBA career, but also ensures that you have a high level impact and can really make you fit in with a lot of different teams. Murray Boyles is also interesting offensively. He can create his own shot at a high level. He can really punish mismatches. He can handle the ball. He has a really good read for the game and feel for the game there. Can pass and dribble handoff situations, or he's really versatile. If he drives, he can really make the right read. He did have several turnovers, and his turnovers were close to his assist numbers, but just watching some of those games, he could have had a lot more assists if his teammates simply made shots, so I really wouldn't hold that against him. He did play on the worst team in the SEC, and he was really asked to do everything for them, but at the NBA level, just having sort of a secondary ball handler, another guy that can create his own shot and play make for others will really benefit him. And then offensively, I think he's going to be able to get he's probably not going to average like 17, 18 a game like he did in college, but he's going to be able to have solid score numbers just with how good he is at punishing mismatches and scoring inside. When you look at him, the only real flaw is that he doesn't have a great jump shot. But other than that, he's such a complete prospect that I find it hard to imagine that he's not going to be a productive NBA player. So that's why he's one of my guys. Also, looking back on just the draft, I've really followed it since around this time last year. As soon as the previous draft ended, I was trying to get into it. And Murray Boyles, really up until March Madness, because he didn't play in March Madness, he was considered a clear top 10 prospect. And with some of these guys rising, whether it be like a Cedric Coward, Carter Bryant, whoever it may be, some guys are bound to fall, and it really seems like at this point Murray Boyles is that guy who's fallen. But at the same time, I would advise people not to look past what he's done throughout his 2-year college career and the pedigree of player that we've viewed him as a clear top 10 guy in this draft. So I would advise, I shouldn't really be giving no advice to GMs, but
No, go ahead, man, because they listen to us just as, believe it or not, they listen to you. They'll listen to you.
I think a lot of GMs would regret passing up on him, just considering how productive he was in college. Just because, I mean, the only real flaw on his name is that he can't shoot the ball, and I think there's so many scenarios where he can be a high level NBA player. I mentioned the Draymond Green comparison. That's one that I do really like for him there. I feel like he could play a similar role. Even like a Paul Millsap is another one that I've heard thrown around that I really like. We get so caught up with shooting, and it is extremely valuable, don't get me wrong. And who knows, maybe there's a chance that he can develop a jump shot. But at the same time, there's so many NBA players that are productive, quality rotational players that don't have a jump shot, or even star-level players that aren't the best shooters. And I feel like that's one thing where you just can't look past a guy like Murray Boyles just because he can't shoot, because he offers literally everything else.
Yeah, and see, guys like him, that brings my player development brain out. Because when you have a guy that's able to be a Swiss Army knife on both ends, I get curious. And when I look at him, I see a guy that could have a Julius Randle type profile if you tighten up that jump shot. Those are the type of guys you get on 1,000 shot diet in the offseason, continuously working on catch and shoot situations and so forth. Defensively, yeah, he's solid. I wasn't really familiar with him until midway through the college basketball season, seeing a lot of tape, on the IG reels come out about him and whatnot. And the one thing I like about him is he has active hands and he's able to anticipate a lot of plays. And Not only is he able to do that, he finds a way to overcome a lot of his issues with the lack of size, with his ability to, pop out and flash in various places. And what I like about his game too is he's improved a ton as a face-up threat, and he's able to put the ball on the deck a little bit. And when he gets a slower or a slew-footed big matched up on him, he can kind of surprise you a little bit with his quickness. I think he has a great feel for the game, and like you said, as a passer, I can see why he gets those comparisons to Draymond Green, because he's good at finding cutters. He's good at finding shooters from the high post or the interior. Very creative and very unselfish, which you don't see a lot from a lot of front court players. But his physicality and his versatility makes him an intriguing enough option for me to where if I was a GM of a team, I might look at him and say, if I got some shooters alongside of me, but I need somebody to quell my second unit, starting out in the league, that might be a guy that I would want. Me personally, I've always been a guard heavy guy, and I know I've been shouting out a lot of guards, and I'm gonna keep that same theme. And I'm gonna talk about a guy that's really been impressive to me when I watch a lot of his tape, and that's the son of Jason Richardson, and his name is Jace Richardson from the Michigan State Spartans. 6'2", a buck 80, really makes great use of his frame, possesses a great first step that typically ignites his attack on the perimeter, has a great change of pace, his ability to get downhill, change gears, beat defenders off the bounce, whether it's with a pull-up or just finishing at the rim. He has a skill set and the ability to be a dynamic three-way scorer in the near future. I know he's an undersized guard. However, we've seen some undersized guards lately kind of thriving in the NBA. One of them is Jalen Brunson, who happened to be a second round pick, didn't get that opportunity right away in Dallas. But once, he had that conference finals against the Warriors, got that big payday, you saw him get the all-star status. I don't know if Jace Richardson is that. However, I do like his game a little bit, and he kind of reminds me a bit of Jalen Brunson alongside of Amonte Ellis. Even see a little bit of flashes of Kobe White in his game. Maybe that's why I like his game so much, because I watch a lot of Kobe White here in Chicago. But yeah, Jace Richardson is one of those guys, man, and I think is solid. And defensively, he has speed and the vision to be dynamic on or off the ball, and always is surveying the floor and is ready to, attack passing lanes and force a lot of turnovers on that end. I think his lateral quickness is his top weapon there. And, if he's able to get to the line and you know, are able to, polish his game up a little bit more, he's a guy that could be a solid 3 and D2 guard for you. Um, or 6 man off the bench, starting out. But one of those guys, you look up, you be like, hey, he might have gave you 20 or 25 on a given night.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. I think you brought up a great point there with his defense, how he's so quick, and that really bodes well for his ability to compete on that end of the floor despite his size. I think that's massive, and I think he's just sort of the perfect complementary guard. He's a great connector as a passer. He can shoot the ball really well, really competes on defense, and I think it's very telling that he decided to stay in the draft when we saw so many guys sort of within his range fall out. I feel like that just means that he got a lot of great feedback, and he's sort of poised to. I don't think he's going to be a lottery pick necessarily, but I think he's poised to be right outside that range, mid first round, right outside the lottery. A team like the Orlando Magic, I think, could benefit from another guard, so I feel like that could be a nice fit there. Just a guy that
Like
can
that
shoot the
pickup.
ball. So I really like his game. He contributes in so many different ways, which makes him sort of different from the traditional smaller guard who's can be a little bit more of like just maybe they're a really great playmaker or they're sort of an ISO heavy guy that's just a gifted scorer. Jace is a little bit different to me in that regard just because he seems to be a very well rounded guard despite really a smaller frame.
Yeah, and you talk about Orlando, man. That would be kind of a homecoming considering, his father played there on the back half of his career. And Orlando is a team that desperately needs shooting. Kind of had the same problem like the Houston Rockets, needs shooting. Half court offense has to be a lot better, leaves a lot to be desired. But defensively, they got a top 5 unit. You pair him over there with a Paulo Banchero and a Franz Wagner on the back end. I don't think that would be a bad addition, especially when we're hearing a lot of rumblings and reports that they could be seeking to trade away a Cole Anthony or a Jonathan Isaac in an effort to get a combo guard. They're going to need several combo guards over there. A guy like Jace Richardson could be an instant microwave off the bench starting out. got to be a spot starter. Maybe he play his role into a starter spot and find some great success there. I wouldn't mind that pick at all for the Magic at 16. That's definitely another team that I enjoy watching a lot on League Pass throughout the year, and I'm very curious to see what lies ahead for them in the offseason.
Yeah, I think they have a massive offseason ahead of them, honestly. When you just look at how wide open the East is, they have an opportunity to capitalize on that. The defense is there. This is a championship level defense, but they really do need to improve offensively, especially in that backcourt. I know they've been in trade rumors for Anthony Simons from the Blazers, who I think would be an ideal fit there. But if you're not able to get a guy like Simons, I feel like you could look to the draft to really improve in that area, and Jace would be a perfect fit in my mind. I think the backcourt fit between him and Jalen Suggs is really intriguing because I feel like they complement each other nicely. Suggs is very big, he's physical, guards multiple positions, and then pairing him with a guy like Jace who can shoot the ball really well, high IQ player, I feel like that would be an ideal fit. And I feel like Jace can also really fit nicely, especially off ball next to guys like Paulo and Franz, who just they really do need the ball in their hands a lot to create shots. I feel like when I look at this Magic team, they do remind me of the Celtics a little bit, just because they are built around two really versatile wings who create shots for themselves, but they don't have the floor spacing aspect. So that's
Right.
really the area of improvement. So I feel like if they're able to add a guy like Jace, that would be perfect. I feel like with this Celtics team, I mean, Drew Holiday and Derek White, Holiday's probably going to get moved this offseason, but looking back on the core for the last 2 years, having Holiday and White in the backcourt next to the Jays was so beneficial because they are, in some ways, off ball point guards, which sounds like a contradiction, but that's almost what they are because of their spot up shooting abilities and how willing of passers they are, and really the defensive impact that they make. So I feel like pairing those with two just versatile forwards is ideal, and I feel like that's what the Magic sort of have to replicate, and they have one step of that with Jalen Suggs, but I think they do need another step of that, and I think Jace could be a good option there. And then also just you still, even though I said off ball guards, you still do need to have that shot creation ability, and I think that's something you could bring to the table as well.
Yeah, you need that guy that can knock down shots and sometimes be that conductor. I think Jalen Suggs has the ability to be the conductor of the offense, but pairing him with a two guard that he can trust when he's kicking it out to him to knock shots down, that's a must. I think the biggest difference between Orlando and Boston, like you said, Boston has an ability to play five out. Orlando does not. So a lot of times they struggle with that. And that offense, like Paulo has an enormous load to carry over there, man. At least these last couple years. He's had to carry an enormous load. And that point guard issue is something that has to get addressed. And they need some help in that department. I don't know if they go all in and seek to make that big splash move. But even if they don't, a guy like Jace Richardson, as you mentioned, could be very helpful to the Magic's cause. And it's funny you bring up, how they're similar to the Celtics because the Magic and the Celtics, those have been like my two favorite teams to watch the last couple years in the NBA every time they go head to head because that's always been the one team I've noticed that Boston struggles with a ton. And when they're on offensively, they give Boston a lot of problems.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we even saw that in the playoffs this year. Although it was 5 games, it was a very hard fought 5 games, and they're
Mm-hmm.
just so physical. And I'm pretty high on this Magic team in general. I feel like it's sort of interesting looking back at the beginning of the season. The Magic and the Pacers, despite the Pacers going to the conference finals, they were almost viewed in like the same tier, but for opposite reasons. There was concerns about the Magic's offense, and then there was concerns about the Pacers' defense. And the Pacers obviously were able to figure it out, and they made the finals run. And they really did change their defense. Their defense has been really stellar, as we mentioned earlier in the show. But the Magic, they never really sort of found the solution. They still struggled mightily on offense. I think they were like a bottom five offense in the league. But if they are able to improve that offense while maintaining an elite defense, this could be a pretty dangerous team in the East.
Yeah, especially with it being so wide open right now. That's definitely a team that could be dangerous in the East, man. Like when you watch the Pacers right now in the finals, if you're a young guy on that Orlando roster like Apollo Banquero, you gotta be asking yourself like, hey, are we really that far off? Because with the defense that we have, we get this offense together, we could be right there. in the summer of 2026. We really can be, and when you look at what they've been trying to do with the rebrand and the arena renovations and stuff like that, Orange County is going to be a destination that's very intriguing to watch over these next 6 to 12 months, man. Because when I look at that defense, like you said, it is championship level defense. And Jamal Mosley has done an impressive job over there, but they got to rectify that offense, man. Because, like you said, it's a bottom five offense. And that's why they struggle. We know injuries played a part as to why they were a play-in team, Paulo being out for a significant stretch, Franz being out for a significant stretch after playing what was all-star worthy level ball. But man, if they get those guys fully healthy and they get some, pieces over there that can, set up the offense, put those guys in position to succeed and be that closer when, the defense collapses on a Franz or Paulo and that safety valve, they're going to be all right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you really, in today's NBA, you never know. And I think we've seen that so many times with just in recent years, really, with the teams that are making these surprise finals run, whether it be a Pacers this year, Mavericks even last year, Heat a couple of years ago. I think this is the parity era of the NBA, and you never know. It's great to see how far along young teams have came in some ways because I feel like going back a few years, even this is something I mentioned with the Thunder experience. It was viewed as really something that mattered a ton. I'm not going to say that it doesn't matter at all because I do think it's still very valuable. But at the same time, with how many young teams have broken through, it really does show that anybody can do it, and you could really be one piece away. Even you look at this Pacers team trading for Siakam at the deadline last year really changed this franchise's trajectory, and I think the Magic could have a similar move there.
Yeah, man, roster building is very important. Very important. And player development is important. But being able to hit on those picks and strike at the right time. And with the NBA and the collective bargaining agreement being what it is right now with that second apron tax, they really penalizing teams for spending over the luxury tax. So if you're gonna do that, you gotta make it worth your while with the moves that you make, and it's very essential to hit. And like you talk about with the Pascal Siakam trade, it did wonders for the Indiana Pacers. And even you look at Oklahoma City Thunder, they saw Josh Giddey wasn't what was necessary or wasn't what was needed. He struggled defensively in that conference semifinal round against Dallas. They trade him to the Bulls, get Alex Caruso, see what he's been doing. And now they have one of the best defenses that we've seen in the league, and they in on the NBA Finals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The addition of Caruso was just massive for the Thunder, and then Hartenstein as well. I feel like those two additions
Yeah,
just totally changed their upside and their defense. And yeah, I mean, the offseason, it's going to bring a lot of excitement. Obviously, there's big name trades floating around like Kevin Durant, but there's also these lesser known players, maybe like a role player like a Caruso, or these fringe all star guys, maybe like a Simons that could be traded and could totally change an outlook for a team. And I feel like that's super important to note. And then, like you said, just getting value out of these draft picks in the second apron era is just massive.
yeah, you gotta do it. You gotta do it. I know some people sometimes, like to criticize GMs for trading picks, but if you have the chance to get talent that can help you in the now, that's the price that you must pay. And the one thing about the draft picks, you kind of got to look at it like, when you buy a car off the lot. As soon as you buy it, it depreciates. So, you got to make sure that you're hitting on these picks. And roster building is very essential and it's important. And I know that this is the non-luxury tax NBA finals and everybody likes to, talk about that. However, winning has a price. As Michael Jordan said in Last Dance, it has a price. And the teams that you're seeing in the finals, they're going to have to spend in the future, some immediately, like with Miles Turner. And you're going to see a Pacers team going to the luxury tax to try and see if they could get back next June, whether or not they win this year or what have you. So, yeah, it's very instrumental and foundational in building a championship team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Before we wrap up here, I know we talked about a lot of the draft stuff, so I just want to get your perspective on the Bulls pick at number 12. Do you have a sort of favorite target in mind, or maybe just a position that you feel like they really need to target? What are your thoughts there?
For the Bulls, you got to get a five. Nikola Vucevic, he's on the last year of his deal, and he's in his early to mid 30s, I want to say, and he wants to play on a contender, and I think he deserves that opportunity. And if you the Bulls, you need to find a way to strike the best deal to put him in that situation and try and get some young talent back if you can, if not a draft pick on some type of level. And you got to get athletic at that position. You need to get younger, and they need to get a defensive anchor. Billy Donovan, he wants to play a fast-paced brand of basketball with the young guys like Modest Buzelis leading the way. I thought he had a great finish to the second half of the season on the way to earning second team all rookie honors. I think a guy like a Derek Queen would be a great add here. I think that's the guy that you should select if you're the Bulls, if he's on the board. If you can't get Derek Queen and you see a Thomas Sorbo on that board, that's who you need to go after. Those are the top two guys I would have on my board. I would look at Colin Murray Boyles. I would probably work him out as well. I'm looking for a guy that's capable of playing the 4 or 5, even a Rasheer Fleming. I need some size on this roster with some athleticism to pair beside Modest Buzelis in his front court and try to elevate my defense to another level. Because this defense is not at the level that it needs to be in an effort to even go on a deep playoff run. I don't even want to talk finals with the Bulls, but you've been a team that's been in the play-in for 3 straight years now, haven't made it out. Hey, you got to figure out what you want to be, and they need to get younger. So if they're going to keep that 12th pick, and Derek Queen's on that board, that's the guy they need to get. So me personally, I'm gonna say they need to go in the direction of a center.
Yeah, for sure. And then Queen and Sorber, as we mentioned earlier, I'm super high on those guys, so I think that'd be an awesome fit. And yeah, you look at this Bulls team, it's almost like they have 10 or 12 backcourt guys and they just don't have anyone in the front court.
Yep, a lot of
Sort of,
guards.
yeah, sort of joking there, but sort of serious when you look
No,
at
it's
the
the
way this
truth.
roster is constructed. Yeah,
It's the truth.
I love the Buzalis pick last year, and he didn't play a ton to start the year, but once he got more minutes after the Levine trade, he really thrived, and I think he's an awesome player. So you got a building block there. Giddy was really solid as well. Hopefully they keep on to or they hang on to Kobe White. I know there's some trade rumors there. I think it might be in their best interest to hold on to him, but at the same time, I can see the logic of trying to trade him before you have to pay him. Regardless, though, yeah, upgrading that front court will be a massive priority for them.
Yeah, and plus they got to figure out whether or not if Kobe White really wants to be here. I can understand if Kobe White wanted to go elsewhere and be on a contender in a 6 man or French starter role. I enjoy Kobe White. I've been a big fan of his. It was a point in time where a lot of people in the city of Chicago were calling for Kobe White to be traded. I remember that very well. But I was one of those guys like, no, like let's wait it out. But for him to perform the way that he did to close out the season, if he can do that consistently, maybe you do give him an extension. But do you see Giddy and White being a formidable backcourt to win with? That's the decision that you have to weigh if you're Arturas Karnisovas in that front office with the Chicago Bulls, who a lot of people in this town where, I'm recording from, not really too pleased with during these times. Not really too pleased with that regime, but they got some tough decisions to make. And Josh Giddy, he say he wants $30 million. If you the Bulls, do you feel comfortable giving the $30 million? But you need a point guard. Like it's a lot. It's a lot. But if they go, I think they keep one or the other. But some's in the waters for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely going to be a tough call for them this offseason. And you did mention that there's not a ton of support for the front office, and I do think that's kind of understandably so given their track record. But hopefully they can sort of right their wrongs this offseason and make some good calls. I could also see why we talked about the Magic earlier. I could see him being a perfect fit there.
Yep. And when you got young talent that you could possibly get back in a deal like an Anthony Black who can help you defensively, you get out and run with. Maybe that's a piece that you would like to get back in that deal if you're the Chicago Bulls and, possibly get a center, like a Goga, but I'd say who's an anchor defensively, even if he's not going to be a starter, could come in and give you, 10, 12 minutes on a given night. Just stuff like that, man. They got to figure out a way to get better defensively. Because that, like you talked about how the Magic were a bottom five offense. Bulls, middle of the pack, bottom five defense certain times, depending on when you looked at the analytics numbers and stats, on defensive efficiency and so forth. So they gotta get right. I mean, I like Buzelis. I think Buzelis is fine, but he has a lot of pressure to live up to here with because this is the thing, the Bulls don't really have, to me, they don't have that guy just yet. Modas might be, but it's still to be determined. But it would be cool to see them, make some upgrades on improving on their defense. And they got to get some guys that's solid two-way players in here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a great point. They really do need to upgrade the defense and the front court as we discussed this offseason. So, yeah, it should be sort of a pivotal offseason for them. Yeah, anyway, I think we're going to wrap it up here. I appreciate you coming on the show. Before we officially wrap up, I just want to give you a chance to plug your show, social media, anything that you want the audience to know.
Oh, yeah, man. Like, New 24 basketball podcast, hour long podcast. Me and my friend Torrin Stagger, we host the show. You can follow us directly across our social media platforms on Instagram as well as Twitter, or X as they call it now, at TNTF_. We just released episode 31 talking about the latest, surrounding the news pertaining to Kevin Durant's situation out in the desert. As we know, he's getting moved as soon as these finals come to a close. We discussed our thoughts and takeaways through the first couple games of the finals as well, the importance of the bench in this series, like you heard me talking about with Eamon, as well as, what Indiana and Oklahoma City have to do in order to gain control of this series. You definitely don't want to miss that. We'll have episode 32 coming for you guys next Wednesday as well. If you somebody that really loves basketball and wants to get, true cool conversation between two friends that just love chopping it up and talking about the NBA every week, and we here for you. And we're going to have some more content coming for you guys this summer as well. And if you want to follow my personal page, you can at What Gabe Said. But yeah, man, just been real fun. If you want to subscribe to our podcast, you can at rss.com/podcast/TNTF. We on every platform: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, whole nine.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you coming on the show, Gabriel. And yeah, make sure to check out the podcast. He does some great stuff. So yeah, appreciate you coming on the show and take care.
Always a pleasure, man.